Okay, so we're getting started in the kitchen today. It's a pretty cloudy, gloomy day outside. And I've got all the kids in here making cookies, which was not my plan. My plan was to make barbecue sauce.
Come here.
So let's talk about what we're doing with barbecue sauce. I don't have a specific recipe. This is going to be me putting together things that I like that I think will go well in a barbecue sauce just based on my cooking. Yes, my opinion and my history cooking. So we've got some brown sugar. We've got some plain salt. This is canning and pickling salt, which is just a salt without any caking, anti-caking agents and iodine. We've got vinegar. This is going to be a mustard-based barbecue sauce because that's the kind I like. We have some seasoning here, specifically garlic powder, chili powder, dry mustard, onion powder, cayenne pepper, and black pepper. Now, the cayenne pepper we may not be using. I do want this to be very spicy, but I have another secret ingredient coming up. We've got Worcestershire sauce and Dale's. So all of this is going to combine to make our sauce. Over here I have some very hot peppers that I have been fermenting for about 3 weeks now. So they are going to be our spice seasoning for the barbecue sauce, and we will go from there just depending on how hot they make it. A little kefir fermenting there on the side, a little beef tallow there. So we have a big pot that we're going to bring this together in. I do plan to can this since it is going to be heavy on the vinegar side. It should be shelf stable with just a water bath canning. We won't need to pressure can it. Okay, so with regard to our fermented peppers, I used airlocks on the top of these jars, and I've already taken the weight off of this one, but I used the little weights like this to keep the peppers weighted down. And move in closer, Evie, so they can see the top of the pepper. So there's no problem with any kind of yeast. Sometimes when you're fermenting stuff, you'll end up with some yeast on the top. We did really good this time. Jars were nice and clean to start with, and no yeast. It smells very peppery. So on these, you're going to want to make sure you leave your brine. You don't have to drain this for purposes of making a barbecue sauce. Now, if you're making hot pepper sauce, you would want to drain a lot of that off. Otherwise, your sauce would be way too thin. So let's get these blended up in the Ninja. They're already choking me. It's so hot.
Yeah, I can smell it.
All right, so we have about 50 ounces of our fermented pepper puree, and we're going to go ahead and get this into our big pot.
Don't eat
All right.
the yum-yums, huh? Come here, yum-yum. Don't eat them.
These
Nice and
peppers
yellow.
were a mixture of Santa Fe peppers, Chatil peppers.
It looks yellow on the
I
camera.
think that was
looks
it.
like
and Korean hot peppers. So what we're going to do next is get our sugar. We're going to put only about this is not measured very well. It's a little bit heaping. This is a half cup measure. We're going to do about a cup of brown sugar, or a little bit more than that because I'm not measuring it evenly. That's good enough. I don't want this to be a super sweet sauce, but I do want to balance out the acidity and the salt that's going to be in it. Now there's already a lot of salt. You can back up. So there's already a lot of salt in that brine. Typically what you're going for a really salty condiment sauce would be about 2 tablespoons per quart of salt. But like I said, there's already a lot of salt in our mixture, and we're going to have probably about 2.5 gallons total. I'm going to start with 4 tablespoons of salt for this whole batch. We can always add more salt if we need it, but you can't take it away. So we're gonna do a lot of taste testing throughout this recipe since we're just kind of making it up.
Yay.
And that's where we're gonna start on our salt. Additional seasoning, we're gonna put a tablespoon of garlic powder. Tablespoon of onion powder.
All I can hear in the background is smacking.
They're eating cookies in the background. Pierce, would you like to hand the camera off? Oh, I
It's just
thought
a
that was Elizabeth, you're dropping cookies all over the floor. So, a heaping tablespoon of dry mustard. This is chili powder. We're gonna add 2 tablespoons of this.
What's it gonna look like when we're done?
I don't know. I'm making this recipe up and I've never made it before. We're gonna hold off on the cayenne like I mentioned before because we have a lot of fermented peppers in there. I'm gonna put about a teaspoon of black pepper in there, and I'm estimating. Now, we're going to go ahead and get our vinegar in the pot.
I thought we were going for the mustard.
It's probably not a bad idea.
What?
Okay.
We're
We're gonna put the whole gallon of vinegar in here.
A lot of vinegar.
It's a vinegar mustard-based sauce. This is going to add the acidity so that our finished vinegar-based barbecue sauce will be good to store on the shelf. Oh, those peppers they're hot. I can taste them in the air.
Yeah, me too.
Got a little bit of onion powder there.
Why does it look yellow in the camera?
Just the lighting, I guess. So this is really more of an orange colored sauce right now. All right. So to this, we are going to add, okay, so our mustard is 30 ounces. So that would be 60 ounces for both of those. So that's a total of 110 ounces between that and the peppers. So that's getting, we want a total of another gallon of non-vinegar based product. So we would have about another 18 ounces of liquid, which we're going to get to with our Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire, however you say it. So we're going to go ahead and get our mustard put in here. We're doing 2 of these. So we've just put a little bit of water in with our mustard bottles to rinse them out. About halfway on both of them. So this is going to be about a total of 30 ounces of water added back to our sauce. Now we're going to add a cup of Dale's. So this is our half cup measure. So we're going to do this twice.
You're gonna throw it away.
Yeah.
You can use it for, it doesn't work good.
Let's go.
Adjust.
Why didn't you give it to me?
Now I can stock my tray.
We're going to put a cup of Worcestershire sauce. We've all had difficulty pronouncing this today. The only other thing that I'm going to add is a little bit of liquid smoke that I don't, and some water, and some,
Is that anything that makes it smell or
Xanthan
taste
gum.
a little smoky?
yes. You want to grab our liquid smoke out of the pantry, the red bottle right in front of you in the pantry. Of the liquid smoke, I'm going to do 2 tablespoons. Now this is not standard liquid smoke. This is almost a barbecue smelling watered down liquid smoke. It's not regular standard liquid smoke, or I would have used less of that. Okay, that's it. I'm just gonna add some water to this and we're gonna start taste testing. All right, so we're gonna add, this is probably a little over a half gallon of water to our sauce. I'm gonna stop right about there just to see where we're
You said
at.
water?
That was just water that I had put in the vinegar jug.
Oh, it's starting to smell.
I'm gonna just taste this and see where we're at on our flavor profile.
Wait, that's my job. Get you another spoon.
It's very spicy. It doesn't need any more pepper.
Wait, what's that?
It's actually really good. I think it needs just a tiny bit more salt.
Couldn't find another spoon.
That's clean, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big.
I don't suggest drinking milk with a vinegar-based barbecue sauce. But go ahead and do what you do. All right, so we're gonna add
Mmm.
a tablespoon of salt. Actually, it's just the right amount of heat for barbecue sauce. It's spicy, but it's not overwhelmingly spicy. All right, so we're doing 2 tablespoons of salt, and I think that's going to be perfect in that amount for the whole pot. I don't think it really needs much else. The only other thing we're going to add is the xanthan gum, which is not going to add any flavor. It's just going to bind all of this together so that it stays together as a cohesive sauce. Of course, it will thicken it a little bit. Our mustard, as this heats, will continue to dissolve into the sauce. Once we get this the mustard completely mixed in, I'll probably get out my whisk and use that. Then I'll add our xanthan gum. Once we get that together, we'll bring this up to a boil, put it into sterilized jars, and then we'll put it into the water bath canner and make it shelf stable. The water bath canner is the canner that we fill with water, and you submerge your jars into that. This, since it's a heavy vinegar base, only needs about 10 to 15 minutes in a water bath canner to make sure your jars seal and you are shelf stable at that point. So we'll be back shortly. All right, so our last ingredient is xanthan gum. First, look up here. I used a whisk and that got all of the little bitty undissolved pieces of mustard mixed in. So it's pretty homogeneous now, and we're gonna go ahead and add our xanthan gum. I have opted to use, for a starting place, 1 tablespoon of xanthan gum. We're just gonna get that sprinkled in. Xanthan gum does not change the flavor of anything you're making.
What does it do for it?
It's a thickener and a stabilizer with regard to a sauce.
It's getting a bit clumpy.
And keeping it cohesive. It'll keep your sauce from separating. A lot of times I'll use xanthan gum when I am making hot pepper sauce, and I use it in the blender. So I don't have a problem with get clumping like this. I'm thinking too, this is clumping because it's a little bit hot. So we're just gonna get a whisk and try whisking this. So note to self, do this when your ingredients are still cold. It'll incorporate in better. We'll get this all mixed up. But kind of like cornstarch that you would add to cold products. Probably the same for the xanthan down. You could also probably mix it in with just a little bit of water before putting it into your sauce to make it smooth. So I'm just going to stir this until I get all these little bitty tiny lumps out. And we'll continue heating this up to a boil. Alright, so come on in. We've got almost the finished product. It's gotten a little thicker with the heat, but we don't want this super thick. We wanted a thin sauce. I've used an immersion blender with it just to get it a little bit smoother. And we're just bringing it up to a boil now before we put it into our sterilized jars. Got some here, some there. My water bath canner holds 7 quarts or 9 pints. So we're gonna do 7 quarts to start with, and then we'll probably do another batch of pint jars. And then we'll leave some that we don't can, that we just put into the fridge for use now. So this is almost, it's steaming pretty good, almost to a boil. Once we bring it to a little simmer, then we'll get it into our jars. Okay, so we've got this just barely to a simmer. Also, we've got our water in our water bath canner heating up so that there's not a big temperature difference when we move one from the hot pot to the other pot. One of the other things, when you're jarring up your hot barbecue sauce, make sure you have your mason jars on a towel so that they don't crack with the change in temperature. You want to leave about 1 inch of head space at the top. Now, I'm gonna make sure your jar lids are clean. These have been sterilized. These are previously used canning lids. As long as you don't pressure can with your lids, they a lot of times can be used one additional time. If you pressure can with them most of the time, they won't hold up to another canning. Go ahead and set that over into our water bath canner. For water bath canning, you do want your jars sterilized. In pressure canning, it's not as important because everything gets sterilized during the pressure canning process. Any high acid foods can be water bath canned. If they're low acid, they have to be pressure canned.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got all of our jars in our water bath canner. And we're gonna put these down into the water. And that is exactly how you want it. You want at least 1 inch of head space over the top. Our water bath canner is already simmering. Let me get the lid for that. So this lid up here on the top has a little gauge that shows you when you're to the right temperature. Now I just put it on. It'll take a minute to come up to temp, but you want it in this green area, and that's how long you hold it there, in that green area. So we're going to do 10 to 15 minutes on these jars once we get to temp. You want it to be at a rolling boil for the length of time that you're timing it for on water bath canning. All right, so I am jarring up the last of the sauce. I really just wanted to show you the consistency of how this came out after it was gently simmered. It's not thick,
Like barbecue sauce.
but it's not a watery consistency. It's not silky smooth because it does have the peppers in it, but it turned out to be just the consistency that I really wanted it to come out to be. So we're going to do a batch of our pints. Same with them, leave about an inch of head space at the top. Up here, as you can see, we're in the green zone. And we've been maintaining that.
Popping me.
Yeah, we've been maintaining that throughout the process. We got about 1 minute left on these jars. And then we're going to be taking them out and getting ready to use our pint jars. We'll probably have to add a little bit more water to this because the pint jars are not going to displace as much water. All right, here's our sauce. We've got 7 quarts here, and we've got 7 pints in the water bath canner for the next batch. That was all of our sauce. How is it, Pierce?
Delicious.
All right, and that's a wrap on barbecue sauce.